I take 100% responsibility. Joni has no blame. The other person doesn't have any blame. It's all, I don't even blame the devil. It's all on me.
These are some of our most private moments, but there actually are 3 people who were not involved in what we're talking about today or affected by our marital challenge they're now saying that unless Daystar pays them $7.5 million.
Marcus Lamb built Daystar Television into one of the largest Christian broadcast networks on the planet. At its peak, it claimed to reach billions of homes worldwide. He died on November 30th, 2021 from COVID-19 complications, leaving behind a network, a family, and a leadership vacuum that nobody was fully prepared for. What happened in the years after his death is one of the most documented, most layered, and most quietly devastating stories in modern Christian media. And the documentation is not coming from tabloids or anonymous blogs. It is coming from court filings, police reports, state licensing board records, expense reports obtained under disclosure requests, and the first-hand accounts of people who were inside Daystar's walls. This video is going to walk through all of it, slowly, carefully, and with sources cited at every step. Before we go any further, I want to be direct about something. Several lawsuits mentioned in this video were settled or withdrawn without going to trial. No court has made a finding of wrongdoing against Daystar, Joni Lamb, or Doug Weiss. Daystar has denied the core allegations in every case we will discuss. You're going to hear what people alleged, what documents show, and what investigators found. You will draw your own conclusions. Now, let us start at the beginning. Marcus Lamb died on a Tuesday morning in late November 2021. He was 64 years old. His wife, Joni, his son, Jonathan, and his daughters, Rachel and Rebecca, were at his side. Daystar announced his death publicly within hours, and tributes poured in from across the Christian world. What the public did not know at the time was that Marcus had put together a succession plan. He committed it to writing. His expressed wish was clear. Joni would lead the network after him, and Jonathan would eventually take over from Joni. Jonathan had been serving as vice president of Daystar. He had been groomed for that role for years. By all external accounts, the transition was supposed to be a family continuation of everything Marcus had built. That is not what happened. Doug Weiss filed for divorce from his wife Lisa in May of 2022. That is 6 months after Marcus Lamb died. Doug Weiss is a licensed psychologist based in Colorado Springs. He runs a counseling practice called Heart to Heart Counseling Center, and for years he had been a regular guest on Daystar programming. He appeared frequently alongside Joni Lamb on air. He authored books on marriage, sexual addiction, and Christian relationships. His platform was built in no small part on Daystar's reach. His divorce filing came 58 days after his last recorded appearance on Daystar programming with Joni Lamb, according to records reviewed by the Roy's report. That number matters not because timing alone proves anything, but because it is one piece of a much larger picture. In February of 2023, Rodney Howard-Browne traveled to Daystar's headquarters in Bedford, Texas, for a face-to-face conversation with Joni Lamb. Rodney Howard-Browne is not a fringe figure. He is a prominent revivalist pastor with deep ties to the charismatic Christian world, and he had been a friend to both Marcus and Joni Lamb for years. According to multiple accounts corroborated by Howard-Browne himself publicly, he told Joni directly that her relationship with Doug Weiss was biblically wrong. He said that Weiss was a recently divorced man and that marrying him would mean, in his words, living in sin. He told her he would not be able to endorse the marriage and that he feared it would cause lasting damage to Daystar's credibility and mission. Joni Lamb did not change course. She and Doug Weiss were married on June 30th, 2023. The wedding was held at Daystar's studio campus in Bedford, Texas. Howard-Browne was not the only one who raised concerns before the wedding. Pastor Valerie Hartwell, who had a long-time relationship with Joni, also urged her not to move forward. Members of the Lamb family privately expressed the same concerns. These were not critics from the outside. These were people who loved Joni Lamb and had invested years of relationship in her life. They believed she was making a serious mistake, and they told her so. She proceeded anyway. Within months of the wedding, the financial questions started surfacing. The Roy's report obtained 2 Daystar expense reports showing that approximately $100,000 was charged to Joni Lamb's Daystar corporate credit card in connection with her honeymoon at a luxury resort. One charge of $36,780 appeared on the card in April of 2023 before the wedding. A second charge of $60,041 appeared in May of 2023, again before the formal ceremony date. The combined total came to just over $96,000 charged to a ministry credit card for a personal vacation. Joanie Lamb denied that Daystar paid for her honeymoon. Daystar issued a statement saying that all charges by Joni Lamb on a corporate card were reimbursed. However, as the Roy's report noted, Daystar provided no documentation of that reimbursement when asked. No receipts, no wire transfer records, no canceled checks. The claim of reimbursement was unverified. That $100,000 honeymoon expense was not the only financial question being raised at the time. A former Daystar insider who reviewed internal records reported being alarmed by approximately $769,000 in private jet travel expenses that appeared in the ministry's books. That figure, $769,220 to be specific, covered flights taken over an extended period, and the concern was not simply that the flights were expensive. The concern was that they appeared to include personal travel charged to the ministry's accounts. Daystar is a tax-exempt religious nonprofit. Money spent on personal expenses by its leaders is not, under IRS guidelines, appropriate use of ministry funds. It can constitute private inurement, which is a violation of the terms of tax-exempt status. Daystar did not provide a full accounting of those flight expenses in response to press inquiries. Now let us talk about Doug Weiss's professional background, because it is not a clean record. The Colorado State Licensing Board for Psychologists issued formal admonitions to Doug Weiss on 2 separate occasions. An admonition in Colorado is a formal disciplinary finding. It is not a suspension or a revocation, but it is an official acknowledgement by a state licensing body that a licensee's conduct fell below the required standard of professional practice. The Roy's report also spoke with former clients of Doug Weiss and Heart to Heart Counseling Center. Several of those clients described what they called traumatic experiences resulting from Weiss's intensive counseling methodology. The intensive sessions at Heart to Heart typically ran 5 days, cost several $1,000s, and often involved the use of polygraph examinations administered to the client's spouse. Former clients alleged that this process was conducted in ways that caused psychological harm rather than healing. One former client described the experience as being interrogated rather than counseled. Another said the methodology prioritized confrontation over care. A 2010 court order is also part of the public record connected to Weiss's counseling practice. The details of that order and what it required are documented in the Roy's Report's investigation, which we have linked in the description of this video. None of this surfaced prominently in Daystar's programming. Weiss continued to appear regularly on air, co-hosting Ministry Now alongside Joni Lamb after their marriage. Now let us talk about Jonathan Lamb. Jonathan Lamb served as vice president of Daystar for years. He was Marcus Lamb's son. He was, by all indications, the man his father intended to eventually lead the network. After Marcus died, Jonathan remained in his role and continued working alongside his mother. Everything changed after Joni Lamb married Doug Weiss. According to Jonathan and his wife Susie, the period following the marriage was marked by escalating pressure, manipulation, and what they describe as spiritual abuse. They allege that Jimmy Evans, a prominent pastor who had become a close ally of Joni Lamb, told them that Joni Lamb was the voice of God to them. The implication, as Jonathan and Susie described it, was that to question Joni's decisions was to question God. That is the definition of spiritual manipulation in virtually every recognized framework for understanding religious abuse. The Roy's report reported on this directly, citing Jonathan and Susie's first-hand account. The headline of that story was, "She's the voice of God to you," and the sourcing came from the Lambs themselves, people who were inside those rooms and those conversations. Jonathan Lamb was terminated from Daystar. The exact terms of his departure and any severance arrangements have not been publicly disclosed. What is known is that after his termination, Jonathan and Susie went public with their account of what had happened inside the network. In 2024, Colleyville Police Department opened an investigation designated as case CPIF 240000152. The investigation concerned allegations that a family member, Josh Brown, who is married to Jonathan and Susie's sister and is a figure connected to the Daystar world, had engaged in inappropriate conduct involving a child referred to in reports as Baby Lamb. Jonathan and Susie Lamb were the complainants. They alleged that they had witnessed or had credible reason to believe that abuse had occurred. Sylvia Torres Gonzalez, a cleaning employee who was present at a 2021 Daystar retreat where one of the alleged incidents occurred, gave an account to investigators that was consistent with Susie Lamb's version of events. She described what she observed, and her account corroborated key details of what Susie had reported. Josh Brown denied all allegations. The Colleyville Police Department closed the investigation in May of 2025 with no charges filed. The stated reason was insufficient evidence. No charges does not mean no event. It means the evidentiary threshold required for a criminal prosecution was not met. That is a legal standard, not a factual conclusion about what did or did not occur. By the time the investigation closed, the broader Daystar story had grown considerably larger. Joni Lamb's health had been declining. She had suffered a serious back injury, and she had been dealing with ongoing health complications that she kept largely private. According to sources who spoke with the Roy's report, in the weeks before her death, she communicated a wish to a Daystar board member. The wish was direct. She wanted Jonathan to be given back Daystar if he was willing to reconcile. Tom Callender, a Daystar board member, later denied that this conversation had taken place in the way it was described, or denied its implications for the succession question. Jonathan Lamb stated publicly that Callender's account was not truthful. Joanie Lamb died on May 7, 2026. She was 65 years old. Daystar announced her death publicly, and tributes came in from across the Christian world, much as they had for Marcus nearly 5 years earlier. The leadership vacuum she left behind is real and unresolved. As of the time this video was published, the question of who leads Daystar has not been answered in any formal, public way. Jonathan Lamb has indicated he is willing to step into that role in accordance with what he says was his mother's dying wish. The board has not confirmed that transition. The network continues to broadcast, but the institutional future of one of the world's largest Christian television platforms remains genuinely unclear. Let us step back and look at the full picture. A network co-founder dies. His widow remarries a controversial counseling figure within roughly 18 months over the explicit objections of close friends, family members, and prominent pastors. The new husband's professional record includes state licensing board admonitions and a range of allegations from former clients. The son who was supposed to inherit the network is fired. The son and his wife allege spiritual abuse by their own mother and her allies. A police investigation into child abuse allegations within the family circle is opened and closed without charges. Financial records show 6 figures charged to ministry accounts for a personal honeymoon and nearly $800,000 in jet travel. The founder's widow dies at 65, allegedly expressing a deathbed wish to restore her son that is then disputed by a board member. Each of those events taken alone could be explained away. Together, they form a documented pattern. And that pattern is exactly what the organizations that reported this story, the Roy's report, the Trinity Foundation, the Fort Worth report, and the journalists who obtained those expense records and police files, that is what they have been describing for 2 years. This is not a story about gossip. It is a story about accountability. It is a story about what happens when institutional power inside a religious nonprofit goes unchecked, when the people closest to a leader are afraid to speak, and when the mechanisms that are supposed to protect both the organization and the people inside it simply do not work. If you want to follow this story, every source cited in this video is linked in the description below. The Roy's report has done the most sustained investigative work on Daystar of any outlet. Their reporting is sourced, documented, and meticulously footnoted. Read it. And if any of what you heard in this video raised questions for you about accountability, governance, or financial transparency in the ministries and churches you support, those are exactly the right questions to be asking. Thank you for watching.